Hello everyone, welcome to another Lightroom editing tutorial. With this video I want to show you a little trick how to make the skies in your landscape images pop. So we're going from this shot to this one. A more natural effect like that can be achieved by using a polarizing filter on your lens. But anyway, if you want to make this effect stronger, just follow this video. If you want to follow along, you can find the link in the description of the video. And now let's begin. So here we have the base raw image. You can see it's very bright, it's pretty well exposed. Looking at histogram, first I do want to change the profile from Adobe Color to Adobe Landscape, which will give everything some more saturation. And that's a good base to begin with. Next up, before we focus on the sky, I do want to get the base things right. That means I'm going to fix the exposure. And since everything is so bright, I'm going to drop the exposure first. This will introduce some more mood to this image, as you can see. Then I'm going to push the highlights just a tiny bit. I don't want to overexpose too much, but if there's some overexposure going on, I don't think that's a big deal. So let's just push it a bit. Then I'm going to bring down the shadows, which will introduce some contrast, just like that. And at the same time, I do want to bring up the blacks to just brighten up the darkest points of this shot and prevent any dramatic underexposure. Alright, looking good so far. Next I do want to add some texture, giving this shot more sharpness. I'm also going to add some clarity and some vibrance. Alright, perfect. Now compared to before, due to the dropped exposure, the image does look much better already. However, I do want to focus on the sky and just kind of add this polarizing effect on top of it. This works really good with a blue sky like this, so let me show you how this works. To do that, we are going to use some masking, obviously. And since I just want to target the blue color of the sky, I can simply use a color range mask. So once I clicked on that, you can see an eyedropper appear instead of your mouse. So I'm going to click right here in the blue part of the sky to select this color tone. And you can see we also have a selection in the bottom part and a bit in the mountain as well. We can adjust the selection by using the refine slider right here. I can bring it down to reduce the colors selected. This already helps a little bit, but I think that's the wrong way to do it. Instead, I'm going to click on the mask and then say subtract. And here I'm choosing a linear gradient. Now I want this effect to be the strongest at the top part and get weaker towards the horizon. So I can make use of the linear gradient and just drag it up like this. Let's adjust it more towards the bottom part, so we get a very soft gradient just above the horizon. At this point you still see the mountain has some selection as well. So just hit subtract once more. This time we're choosing the brush tool and I'm just brushing over all the selected parts. So I'm having a hard time deselecting it. That's because I have the auto mask option activated. Let me just deactivate it and again just brush over the mountain here. Once we have done the selection, all you need to do to add this polarization effect is to make that area darker. And how do we do this? Simply by bringing down the exposure. You can see this will add a lot more contrast between the blue part of the sky and the clouds and the mountains. And thus we're making the whole sky pop. So I'm going to make it really dark. I know a lot of people don't like this effect. However, I personally really love those dark skies. To fine tune it a little more, I'm going to bring down the temperature, giving it a stronger blue color tone. And you could also apply some noise reduction since we don't have any detail in that mask. So that is looking pretty good. Alright, that was it for the main part I wanted to show you with this video. However, I do want to finish the editing for this image. So let me continue by creating another color range mask. This time I'm targeting the green grass in the center part. So just click in here. We could refine it some more, adding some more color to the selection. Here I'm going to bring up the exposure, making this part a little brighter. I'm also going to drop the highlights just to prevent overexposure and get some more details in the grass. Then let's introduce some texture. And finally, I think I want to make it a little more vibrant, so I'm going to bring up the saturation. Just like that. Perfect. Finally, I do have one more linear gradient for the near foreground like that. Here I'm going to push the whites, giving this spot some more brightness. I'm also going to push the clarity to make the waves a little more visible. Perfect. And that's it for the masking stuff. Now let's compare to before once more. It looks much better with way more contrast, so I'm really happy with that already. But let's do some color grading, and I do want to start in the HSL panel. Here I'm starting with the hue, and that is because I don't like the greens of that grassy hill. Instead I want to make them more yellow orange-ish, so I'm going to bring down the yellow hue just a bit. And let's also bring down the green hue. Again, that is an adjustment not everyone will like, but I'm personally just a fan of those orange-blue color tones. Now let's head over to the saturation tab. Here I do want to bring down the yellow saturation just a notch. That is looking much more natural. Also, I'm going to bring down the blue saturation. Alright, perfect. Now let's switch over to the luminance tab. Here we can work some more on the sky by bringing down the blue luminance if we want. I'm going to drop it just a tiny amount, and at the same time I'm going to bring up the yellow luminance, which will make the grassy patch a little brighter. Maybe even the orange tones. Just like that. Perfect. We're almost done. However, let's apply some split toning for the highlights and the midtones. For both of them I'm going to use a warm hue somewhere around here. And let's bring up the saturation. Alright, looks good to me. So let's switch over to the midtones and do the same thing with a warm hue and an increased saturation. Perfect. Finally, I am heading down into the calibration tab and just bring down the blue primary hue. This will give us some more intense color tones in the grass, but also in the sky. At the same time, I do want to bring up the saturation. That is looking great. So finally we can head into the details tab for the sharpening. Here I'm always dropping the radius all the way down while increasing the details all the way up. And of course I'm applying some masking. By holding down the Alt key I can see where the mask is applied. So I can specifically target the important parts of the image like that. And now let's bring up the amount of sharpening. Perfect. So here we have the finished image. I hope this Lightroom tutorial was interesting and helpful. Of course, as always, if you have any questions left, feel free to ask in the comments, and thank you very much for watching this video.